brief readings from Mark's Gospel that frame the story of Jesus feeding the 5,000 and walking on water. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place, all by yourselves, and rest a while." For many were coming and going. They had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As Jesus went ashore, he saw a great crowd. He had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and he began to teach them many things. And then we continue. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized Jesus and rushed about the whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard Jesus was. And wherever Jesus went, into villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched it were healed. Reading ends here. This morning I'm going to mostly work with Ephesians and touch just a little bit perhaps on some of the other readings. Ephesians has this wonderful image of a wall of separation, a wall of hostility. And I want to work with that a little bit this morning. All of us know the expression from Robert Frost, good fences make good neighbors. Many of us have seen, and maybe some of us have even been to the Great Wall of China. And there was always a question, was the wall built for defense from those outside the wall, or was the wall to keep the people of China in? One of my earliest political memories was the erection of the Berlin Wall. I guess it was 60 or 61. And I remember seeing a picture of an East German soldier leaping the beginning barricade of it to find freedom in West Berlin. And we all remember, or almost all of us remember, that without a shot, the Berlin Wall fell mostly at the hands of young people. Ephesians is imagining a world without walls, at least one that exists within the walls of the church. Ephesians is talking about two groups of people who did not deal with each other very well, especially in religion. Jews were thought to be not only a chosen people, but a separate people. They looked down on Gentiles. Gentiles, non-Jews, looked down on Jews themselves. But now, Ephesians says the fledgling church unites Jew and Gentile, each holding a hand of Christ. No more wall. Joined together in a new family, a new community. Paul uses political language to get at that. They are now equal citizens in a new political community called the church. None of them are closer to God or farther off from God than anybody else in this church. It is an equal gathering. Now, all of us, in church or outside of church, continue to try to manage a fundamental human tension between affiliation and exclusion, between inclusion and separation. Current church growth material says that churches form best when like-minded people join together, affiliation. Others say, no, no, no. The church has to be as wide a tent as possible, carrying in every imaginable group and age of people. When I was born, we had state-imposed segregation in many states of our union. Mercifully, those days are gone. But in our lifetime, we've seen precious little development of unity or community, and indeed seem intent on building up more barriers between each other, between races, but between class or gender or the other things that we use to separate, to divide one from another. In Ephesians, it deals with this quite boldly. It uses the image of the cross and makes it a literal, if you will, metaphor, in that the cross X's out, cancels out, crosses out the divisions between people, and imagines that the cross itself has been turned as a bridge between parties, something that joins people together, not a cudgel, not something that forces or coerces, but joins estranged parties together on the same side, in the same team. In a new book I just finished from the library, Joseph Ellis, in his book, The Quartet, marks the immense struggle that it took to get this country from 13 different states and a very weak central government into this new government under which we still live, a constitution determined to draw a people together, notwithstanding the barriers of state boundaries or the more persistent social ones. How do you become one nation? How do you become one church? Ephesians says that all of us in the church have equal access to God. The church's image is that of an open door that lets us all in. It is not to exclude. It doesn't matter who we are or where we come from. We are equal in the eyes of God in this new human family. It's in a way that it imagines the church as an early form of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Not color, not gender, not race, not creed. None of those separate us from being citizens of this country. It imagines a similar access, not to the halls of government, not to the marketplace, but to the attention of God. We need to hear this after all these years, both in church and in our community, that all the divisions we emphasize, class, gender, race, attitude, we have gotten to the point where we divide ourselves up into similar groups and have created or have made permanent dividing walls of hostility. Recently, I got to speak to a variety of community forums on the issues of race. In one at Morning Star, I used this precise example, that the dividing wall of hostility in Jesus Christ has been removed. But at the same time, at a local church, I argued that differences between groups need not be ignored, need not be wiped away, but none be seen as superior or inferior to the other. If the dividing wall of hostility's been removed, how do we live like it? Susie just gave us perhaps a hint of one way to do it with the upcoming block party here in about a month. Common work forges bonds. Common work helps to paper over the differences, real or imagined, that we have together. Common work binds us together and transcends our differences. For a spiritual community, maybe I'm jumping the gun too much. Praying together might be the fundamental act of joining together, less hand to hand, or even heart to heart, but soul to soul. It is imagining a world where different people can pray together to the same God. A different world when we can pray together, notwithstanding all the differences that threaten to divide us. Ephesians imagining that the church, a new household of God, is a fundamental spiritual reality. But it's more than that. It's not imagining the household of God gathers together only briefly on Sundays as a weekly time out to try to pretend peace is possible by sitting next and praying with people that we scrupulously avoid the rest of the time. What the church offers is a new way for us to imagine that we can live. And notice that the cross is its central metaphor. It doesn't force things. It doesn't coerce things. It's a new kind of power. Christ's cross was self-sacrificial. It crossed all boundaries. It was lived and died and rose for everyone. This is a new sort of power, a new sort of divine politics. The politics of a love that will break down every barrier. This new power undermines every wall until, as it says, we are built spiritually into a dwelling place for God. That we, all of us, gather in this sanctuary. All of us carry a sanctuary in our souls. All of us make our interactions a holy place. A place where God establishes peace. Lord knows we need to be reminded of the clarion call of peace against antagonism and indeed violence in our time. I'm concerned sometimes that in its attempt to be relevant and on the side of justice, the church has excused violence from the side it approves far too often. If anything is the message of the Church of Jesus Christ, it must be peace. And can violence have a place in the church, the community of peace? I want to be careful here. We can claim our point of view and defend it. We don't have to bow and accept another point of view. I dislike censorship, whether it comes from the left or the right. As international agreements often do, the administration is facing a storm of criticism in its attempt to secure at least some peace with Iran. Peace is difficult. Peace is hard work. And Ephesians fully realizes this. but it heightens it in a new way. It emphasizes not only the cross, but the blood of Christ, and turns that metaphor around. Christ's life blood was shed in execution. It argues that peace emerges from that offering of self, that bloody offering of self, more than all the bloody victories of warfare. Peace is its central word. Lord knows we need peace in communities that can't even be called communities because there's precious little commonality. Instead, we've divided up walls of hostility all through us. And hostility does result in violence over and over and over again. But Ephesians also promises not only the breaking down of the dividing wall of hostility between us, but within us as well. That one of the ways we can establish communal peace is to know inner peace as well. Simmering hostility is more our mode of operation than knowing peace, external or internal. In Mark, notice that in a world full of need and pressure and demand, Jesus demonstrates a solid center that knows peace. He urges the disciples, after their healings and teaching, to get away and find some peace. Nothing threatens our inner peace, perhaps, more than illness. It seems like it divides our very self against us. And often illness is sometimes our body turning against itself as an enemy. To allow healing to occur, Jesus says, come to a quiet place and get some rest. The needs and the pleas are enormous. And in the midst of it, the heart of Jesus goes out to them. He feels compassion. He feels like they're lost, and he continues to do his work to teach and to heal. Too often, the church, within even its Sabbath worship, uses our precious time, instead of opening the door to inner and outer peace, to claim, to seek, to ask for more and more and more. More time, more money, more energy, more talent. But Ephesians realizes that we can do all that if we see that the structure, the very keystone or cornerstone that allows the church to live, is there in the household of God, all based on Jesus. The church is a new way of humans organizing their lives. It's called to the highest of aspirations because all of us are not only connected to each other, but all of us act as the very structure for God and the peace of God to exist. Inner and outer peace are part of the same integration, a word we don't hear much anymore, that joins us together, that allows us to live in a world where boundaries raise and are knocked down. But in the end, all of us, one human family.